I'm going to go through this presentation pretty quickly because I know everybody loves PowerPoint, but we're going to try to minimize the PowerPoint time and get on to just kind of chatting about Hong Kong. And so I'll go through why I moved here to Hong Kong, or why I think it's a great business environment. And once I go through kind of some of this boilerplate stuff and some stats that I think are interesting, then I'll tell you a little bit about my story and get into some more of the personal specifics, and then we can open it up for some questions after that. So, do I have to be closer to this, or does it really have to be line of sight? Oh, there we go. This is one of the light ones, not one of the radio type ones. So, so doing business in Hong Kong, or why you would or wouldn't do business in Hong Kong. So first of all, there's no Walmart here. So this is one of the challenges. Seriously, I move over here. There's nowhere where you can go and just buy everything that you need. So for example, my wife, she had a shopping list the other day, and she goes out and she gets some stuff, but she has to go to 6 different stores to get it. It ends up taking 7 hours to get the stuff. If we were in the US, we'd go to Walmart, it'd be a half-hour trip, we'd be done. And it ends up being a really big deal. And so there's just nothing like Walmart here. There are these little grocery stores, there are these other stores, but you have to go to all these different places to get stuff. The next challenge here, there's no Amazon. There's no e-commerce infrastructure here. And the reason why is it's a really small market. When you do e-commerce, you want to go after the biggest market possible, because it costs the same, more or less, to roll out to a big market as a small market. So why would you go after a small market like Hong Kong with only 7 million people? So there's very little e-commerce here. We actually order stuff from Amazon and pay to have it shipped over here, because sometimes it's easier and cheaper to do that than it is to actually find stuff locally. But there's a lot of stuff on Amazon that they won't ship over to Hong Kong. So I'm going on a trip to the US this month, and I'm ordering all sorts of stuff, having it sent to an address there. I'll pick it up while I'm in the States, and I'll bring it back. That's how inconvenient it is to get some stuff here. There's no Costco. You can't buy in bulk. Nobody has room to put anything in bulk in their place. So if you're going to Costco and you bought a huge bag of almonds, you'd bring it home here, and you'd be like, where do I put this bag of almonds? There's nowhere to put it. At home in the US, you go buy something, you keep that box around just in case you need that box to move later on. You can't do that here. There's nowhere for that box. So here you buy stuff, you throw out all the packaging, and then if you need it later, you're just stuck. You've got stuff, but you've got no room to put it. So Hong Kong's just a small place. You live in small places. There just isn't a lot of room to put stuff around. The education system here, so they've got public schools, and they might be okay, but a lot of people want to put their kids in private schools here, and this is what it costs to put your kid in a private school, $25,000 a year, which is probably more than you guys are paying at Baylor, right? So, no? All right, maybe not. But would you pay that much to put your kid in a private school? So I know people here who have 4 kids in a private school. They're paying $100 grand a year just to send their kids to school. And the feedback that I get from people is that it's not like the schools are super amazing or great or anything. It's just a normal school, but it costs 25 grand a year per kid to put them in a private school here. The summers, this is really nice. What you're experiencing right now, this is very pleasant. In about a month, it's going to get super hot here. And last June, we had the hottest month on record in Hong Kong. And it's a sauna. It's just, you go outside and you're completely soaked in sweat within 3 or 4 minutes. And it's kind of miserable during the summer. So June, July, August, it's just terrible here. The fall and spring are really nice here, kind of like it is now. If you had been here 2 weeks ago, it was even nicer, just a little bit cooler, not quite so humid. But summers are kind of miserable here. The winters, it actually gets pretty cold here. You'd be surprised. This winter, we had the lowest temperature ever recorded in Hong Kong. We actually got ice on some of the mountaintops, and people didn't know what to do with it. They had video of people going up on top of the mountains, and then they were slipping down roads and falling, and the police were having to rescue people because they didn't know how to walk on ice. It was kind of humorous. But the reason it really gets cold here, I've never been colder. I've lived in Rexburg, Idaho, and if you've ever been to Idaho, it gets cold in Idaho. But I'm colder here in the winters because there's no insulation here. So if it's 40 degrees outside here, it's 40 degrees inside here, and there's no central heating here. There's central air conditioning, which they also tend to run in the wintertime for some reason here. They're really into their air conditioning here. So it's just, it gets cold here and it just gets into your bones and the humidity and everything. And you guys, you're on the East Coast, you've experienced this too, but that cold and humidity just gets inside and it kills you. So then you've got the time zones, which, so we have people working for my business who are on the East Coast. It's 12 to 13 hours off depending on the time of year. So, and the thing is, with my business, everybody's in the US. They don't care what time it is for me. They just care what time it is for them. So it's all about them and their convenience and when they're awake. And so I find myself waking up at 2 a.m. to make a call when it's 2 p.m. their time. And I'm waking up at 5 a.m. and all these crazy hours. And that's just the way it is. If you do business here and you're from the US, you end up having to modify your sleeping schedule to match when other people are awake. Whoops. Oh yeah, did I mention there's no Amazon? So, but this is all manageable. It's still a great place to be. It's still a lot of fun to be here. And you get used to everything. The first 2 or 3 months after we moved here, it was rough. My wife was really stressed out. But then you just kind of get used to how things work, where stuff is, where you get stuff. And you settle into it, and it just starts becoming this new normal, and it doesn't seem so bad anymore. And as they say, those who have a good enough why can figure out the how. We had a pretty strong why for why we wanted to come here to Asia, and so we figured all that stuff out. So why to live in Hong Kong? I just went through the negatives. Here's the positives. So first, why Asia at all? And really, it comes down to just the massive potential here. It's hard to overemphasize the numbers here in Asia and how fast it's growing, and especially how fast the middle class is growing. I'll go through some of these stats here. So right now, the population in Asia, 4.3 billion people. We've got 300 million in the US, we've got 4.3 billion. Just that point whatever is the US, and then you've got this 4 billion here. And that's growing fairly quickly. It's supposed to be up to about 5 billion by 2030. But it's when you look at, sorry, this thing's skipping all around. It's really when you look at the growth of the middle class, this is where things get exciting. So in 2013, people who are in the middle class, and I don't know exactly what that means, but middle class here would be considered still poverty probably in the US. But here you've got people who are moving from making maybe $1 a day up to making $10 a day. That's a big leap for people. I mean, that's a 10 times increase in their income. So that's life-changing. But you've also got people who are moving from making maybe $100 a day, well, not that, but maybe $10, $20, $30 a day, and then they're moving up to making maybe $100 a day. That's also life-changing, and all of a sudden those people have enough money to buy real products that people are selling. And so we often think about all these companies in Asia making stuff, taking it to the US and selling it there. But now there's a big move for companies from the US to be selling their products into Asia. And it's because of this middle class that's growing. So in 2013, the middle class throughout all of Asia was about 525 million. By 2030, that's supposed to be 3 billion. So we're talking about 6 times, and that's huge growth. You're not going to see that kind of growth anywhere else in the world in terms of a middle class growing and increased spending ability. And you'll also see this growth in internet penetration here. So in 2005, internet penetration throughout all of Asia Pacific was about 9.4%. Now that's up to about 40%, and that's getting a lot higher as we see cheaper cell phones and cheaper internet. So there are a lot of people who, for the first time in their lives, are getting online, and it's all through a mobile phone. They don't have a laptop, they don't have a desktop. All they've got is that phone. For them, that is the internet. So in 2005, we had 344 million internet users in Asia Pacific, and now that's up to 1.56 billion. So you think about selling apps to people or selling anything online, This is a huge market over here. In the United States, your max market's going to be 320 million. There just aren't any more people than that. That's if every kid had a cell phone, which they almost do, I guess. But here, the market's just massively bigger for everything online. In 2005, we had 0 mobile internet users because it didn't exist. It doesn't seem like that long ago, does it? I mean, 2005 wasn't that long ago, but the iPhone and everything that came afterwards, that was all after 2005. So it was pretty much 0 in the US as well. But today we've got over 1 billion mobile internet users in Asia Pacific, and that's growing rapidly here as well. So we see mobile phones that are now selling for under $100. You can get a smartphone, and that's going to be dropping faster and faster, and eventually people will just give away smartphones. Facebook will give away smartphones just to get people using Facebook. Google's going to be giving away smartphones just to get people using Google so they can sell more advertising. And you're going to see people in India and the rural areas in China, hundreds of millions of people are suddenly going to have a smartphone, whereas today they don't even have electricity. They don't have toilets, but they're going to have a smartphone 5 years from now. Okay, so why Hong Kong specifically here? So one is just the location. Hong Kong's really central to everything else here. So you've got half of the world's population within a 5-hour flight of Hong Kong. That's huge. So here's kind of a circle. That's about a 5-hour flight. You've got Hong Kong right in the middle there. So you can pretty much get to India's kind of on the border there. You can get to pretty much all of China. You can get just about to Tokyo. But pretty much all of Southeast Asia and most of Asia is right in that circle that's right around Hong Kong. So it's a great central location that way. Shenzhen is 1 hour away. And Shenzhen is this hot new manufacturing hub because there are a lot of hardware startups there. There's a lot of Internet of Things startups there. And so you see a lot of companies coming here, and they'll open up an office in Hong Kong where it's more convenient to do business here. You have open internet. You don't have to deal with all the challenges of doing business in China. But you can hop right across the border and be inside a factory and watch them making your product within about an hour, maybe 2 hours, depending on where your factory is located. So there are a lot of people who go back and forth across that border, and they're running half the business here, they're running half the business there in Shenzhen. So it's a hot place that way. We've got groups from Berkeley, from Stanford, all these people are coming here and living here to do their Internet of Things startups, their hardware startups. There's a hardware accelerator in Shenzhen called HAX. They have over 100 companies there. Brink, which James mentioned, is here in Hong Kong. They've got 15 people in their accelerator, and they're doing some exciting startups here. Incorporation here, it's really easy to set up a business. You can incorporate in less than an hour. There's a lot of startup support. You come here, and everybody's attitude is just, hey, how can I help you? What can I do for you? Who can I connect you with? Who do you want to get to know? It's really easy to get into the startup scene here and just make connections and get to know a lot of people here in Hong Kong. It's very friendly. And the government is actually kind of helpful here. So when I started moving my business here, this group called InvestHK reached out to me and they said, hey, we're with the government, we want to help. And I thought, yeah, I've heard that one before. So I thought, I'm standing far away from these people, and I ignored all their emails, and finally they kept pestering me, and I thought, well, these people seem like they really sincerely want to help me, so I guess I'll respond to this email. See, in the US, I mean, you respond to an email and then you end up with an audit or something. So I thought, okay, I'll respond to these people, and I connected with them, and they were actually very helpful. They made valuable connections for me. They taught me a lot about just how to do business here in Hong Kong. They helped me with immigration issues. So the government here, they actually do help. There are some other great things about living here in Hong Kong. It's a very healthful place to live. Hong Kong has the longest life expectancy in the world. I think part of that is because you end up walking a lot here. When I first moved here, the first 2 months I was here, I lost 10 pounds. I didn't change anything about my lifestyle in terms of diet or anything else, but I was just walking a lot to get around to places. It's just kind of the way the city's structured. And so I lost a bunch of weight here. And if you go around here, you'll just notice that most people are pretty thin here. They eat small portions. that might be because if you go to a restaurant here, it's like $20 and you get like that much, and maybe that's why they eat so little. But life expectancy is pretty high here, and it's easier to maintain a healthy lifestyle here because you're kind of forced into it. You don't have a lot of choice sometimes. Safety, it's great. There's like zero crime here. So yeah, if you cross the street, if you jaywalk, you might get hit by a cab or something. But you can walk anywhere in the city, anytime, day or night. Nothing's going to happen. Unless you mess with the Triads, which is the local gang here. But they don't mess with you unless you mess with them. And I have no idea how many Triads there are. I've never heard of anybody having problems with them. But it's just super safe here. So I've walked around places where I'm looking at it late at night and I'm thinking, man, if this were LA where I grew up, I'd be scared to death right now because I wouldn't have long to live. But here you can walk in these dark places and it's just, you're fine, 9, 10, 11 p.m. at night. You really don't have to worry about it. I don't worry about my wife going anywhere in the city anytime, day or night. I know people who let their kids run around the streets here and just do whatever at 10 p.m. at night. And it's safe. It's a very safe place. And that's kind of general to most of Asia. There are some places in Asia that are dangerous. Other places aren't so much. We have the 5th fastest internet in the world here. Average speed is 15.8 megabits. Oh, here's a little benefit. It's legal to kill your husband if he's cheating on you here. But there's one condition. You have to kill him with your bare hands. So, little perk for the women here. So a lot of people, that is true, by the way, it is legal. So a lot of people have questions about Hong Kong, and so a lot of people, I get this question a lot. So is Hong Kong part of China, or is it not part of China? So Hong Kong is, well, first of all, it's 266 islands, so there are a lot of islands here. People usually just think of these skyscrapers that you see here, and that's what they think of as Hong Kong. But there are a lot of islands here. Most of these aren't populated. A lot of them are pretty small, but a lot of them do have little villages or cities on them. So it's kind of spread out across a bunch of islands here. Whoops. And so you've got Hong Kong Island, which is where we are right here. That's the main city. That's what you see outside. This is what you see all the photos of Hong Kong. You've got the other side over here, which is called Kowloon. And this is connected to the mainland up here. You've got Lantau Island, which is the airport where you guys came in on. I actually live on Lantau right there. And then you've got mainland China up here. So the border's right about there. There's Shenzhen. And the distance from Hong Kong to Shenzhen here, that's just, it's a few miles. Now it ends up taking an hour or two to get there because of the way travel works, and then you have to go through immigration and everything every time you go across. But it's all very close, and this is a relatively small area right here. Whoops, wrong way. So the most heavily populated area is this part here. It's that Kowloon area. It's this side of Hong Kong Island. If you go over to this side of Hong Kong Island, it's very green. There's a lot of jungle, forest type stuff. Same thing if you go out to Lantau, it's very green. A lot of people don't know this, but 75% of Hong Kong is completely undeveloped. It's just green space. It's hills, it's trees, it's trails. Only 25% of Hong Kong has buildings or people living on it. So it's not just city like this. There's a lot of great outdoor spaces. I do a lot of trail running here. My family and I, we go on a lot of hikes, and we do camping. And so there are a lot of outdoor activities that you can do here. And of course, you've got ocean all over the place. A lot of the beaches are kind of not so great here. But if you go up here or something farther away from the city, there's some nice beaches up there. It's a lot of fun. So again, primary business area is right there within that circle. So, and then right here, this is, when you hear central, this is what people are talking about. That's central. We're basically in central now. We're kind of on the border into this other neighborhood called Sheungwan, but that is the main business area right there, is in central. So whenever you see photos, it's of that area right there. It's not the rest of Hong Kong so much. I'm bringing my own clicker next time. This one's driving me crazy. Just to give you an idea of size, There's San Francisco. That's about how big Hong Kong Island is, superimposed over San Francisco. So again, it's a pretty small space geographically. Okay, so Hong Kong is a special administrative region of China. So it is technically owned by China, but it's different. They call it one country, two systems. And there's some funny memes that go around on the internet about that. They'll have like a dog with a cat in its mouth, and somebody will put one country, two systems, and the cat represents Hong Kong and how it's treated by China. So, so for all intents and purposes, Hong Kong is its own country. The way that business is done here, the way that you would live here, it's not at all like China. It's very much its own separate autonomous country. The only time that you ever hear about Hong Kong being part of China is more at a political level, or if you were doing very big business type stuff, then you might have to deal with China somehow. But for me and for everybody else I know here, it's a completely separate country, and that's how it works. The internet's separate, business is separate, the court system is separate, the legal system's separate. So it's just, for all intents and purposes, it's really two separate countries. We talked about the green space already. Population, 7 million. And starting a business in Hong Kong, you have to get immigration, you have to get a visa here to start a business. I had to get a business investment visa because I own my business, so I had to get a special visa for that. It took about 2-3 months to get that. They now have a new startup visa to accelerate the process of getting startups over here. Office space, we've already definitely gone over co-work spaces and that, so I won't go through that other than to say that office space is super expensive here. And that's why we have all these co-work spaces like Garage Society. Blueprint is another one. The Hive, Paperclip, Wind. So you've got all these co-work spaces, and we'll get to the banking in a second, but the co-work spaces, you might think, wow, this is really small, this is really crowded. The thing is, all these startups, before these co-work spaces existed, they couldn't afford office space at all. And so they worked at Starbucks. So this is a step up from working at Starbucks. And if you go to a Starbucks today still, you'll hear all sorts of business deals, job interviews, all sorts of business being conducted at Starbucks here. That's what Starbucks is used for here. So these co-work spaces, it's kind of you start up in Starbucks, then you go to the co-work space, then you get your own office. That's the natural transition. Banking here is a massive pain, just like everywhere else in the world. It's terrible, it's horrible. HSBC is the big bank here. If you're a US citizen, they don't want anything to do with you. You walk in, they say, no, we're not going to give you an account. And it's really tough to get a bank account with HSBC here, which is like 85–90% of the banking industry here. So you can go to these other smaller banks, they'll be nicer to you, but still, it's a pain to bank here. Whoops. Seed capital, there are a lot more angel investors now than there were just a few years ago. It's still very much an immature startup scene, so there aren't a lot, but there are a lot more than there used to be. We now have a lot of accelerators popping up. We have a lot of pitch events and other startup events. Venture capital, again, it's very immature in terms of venture capital here, but it's growing. There's a lot of money, but there's not a lot of sophisticated money when it comes to investing in startups. Living in Hong Kong, July, wettest month. Healthcare, it's socialized healthcare here, so it's free, but it's free in the sense that you go there and you wait for 6 hours and then you get to see your doctor. My wife was interested in getting an MRI. She got an appointment for October. That's the soonest appointment she could get, but that's just an appointment to see the doctor to see about getting an MRI. So after October, then she would have to wait another 6 to 8 months to actually get the MRI. Or she can just go and pay $1,500 and get the MRI tomorrow, or she can wait 1.5 years to get the MRI on the socialized/free system. So yeah, they have socialized medicine, but it's not so great. So a lot of people will have a private insurance policy that allows them to get into stuff faster. Cost of living, super expensive but manageable. We have the second highest cost of living out of any city in the world as of 2015. But again, that's if you want to live right here in the middle of Hong Kong. So if you wanted to live in one of these apartments out here, For a 700 square foot apartment, which is about the size of this room, you're going to pay $5,000 or $6,000 a month to live in that. And it's not going to be anything super special. So if you want to live here and have the convenience of living right here in the middle of the city, you're going to pay that much. But if you want to live out on Lantau, you can get the exact same thing for about $1,000 a month, and then you've got a 40-minute commute to get into work, and that's the only trade-off. So if you don't want to pay a ton of money, you can still live in Hong Kong. You can live on one of these places that is a little bit farther away. Language, English and Cantonese are both official languages here. I know people who have lived here for 45 years, still don't speak any Chinese whatsoever. They get along just fine, so you don't have to speak any Chinese to get here. It's a shame that they've lived here this long and don't speak Chinese, but you can get by that way. That's one of the great things about moving here, though, is you don't have to worry about the language. You just move here, you get along just fine. You have some difficulty in taxis and at 7-Eleven, but that's about it. Yeah.
Is English taught in the schools, elementary school?
Yeah, it is taught here as an official language. So, so our daughter, when we first moved here, we put her into a kindergarten, and it was mostly Cantonese, but then they had English classes for the kids there too. So everybody pretty much learns English. There was a period in Hong Kong where they didn't teach English for a few years, and so you have people who graduated from school during that time and they don't know any English, and those are all the people who drive the taxis today for some reason. So everybody else seems to have pretty good English. We have the best subway in the world. It's really cheap. We have a lot of taxis. The taxis are super cheap here. It's very easy to get around on public transportation and very affordable here. Outdoor lifestyle, talked about this a little bit. Hiking, trail running, swimming, camping, boating, fishing, all that stuff. And so that's the end of that basic stuff here. So do we have any questions so far? I'll tell you a little bit more about my story in a second, but do you have any questions about kind of the basic Hong Kong stuff, that overview? Yes?
Do you drive here?
No, we don't have a car. It's great. I don't have to worry about repairs. I don't have to worry about car insurance. And we know people who have cars, but you don't really get a car here unless you have a specific reason that you need a car. Because if you drive a car here to downtown, you're just going to end up stuck in traffic all day anyway. And the parking spots here are super, super expensive. So I just don't see a compelling reason to have a car. We live out on Lantau. We have 2 bikes. I ride 5 minutes. I get on a ferry boat. I work on the ferry on my laptop while I'm coming here to the island. I get off the ferry boat. I walk 10 minutes to the office. I get my exercise in. It's great, except when there's a typhoon. Then I get soaking wet at the same time. But it's very easy to get around, and I just don't see any reason to own a car. But we have friends that they want to go certain places on weekends, or they have their own reasons for wanting to have a car. They live in a place that's not quite as close to the public transportation, so they might want to have one. But the vast majority of people here don't have a car, and we don't miss it at all. In fact, we love not having a car. So,
How long have
yeah.
you been here now?
3 years.
How long did it take you to feel as happy about it as you are now?
Oh, 6 months.
Okay. I just
Yeah.
moved to Singapore a month ago, so I wish you would have given your talk, and I may have made some different decisions. This is like my life now as well.
You know, I like Singapore, but everybody that I've met here who's moved here from Singapore, they all say the same thing, which is it's just really hot all the time. And we have seasons here. We have winter, we have summer, we have spring, we have fall. I like those seasons. And also I like mountains. I mean, we don't have really tall mountains here. They're only 3,000 feet high. But Singapore's got nothing. It's just flat. And I like having a little bit of mountain type stuff. So I'd still be, we might move to Singapore someday and try that out. And, but I love Hong Kong. It's great. Yeah.
So you were speaking about having difficulty opening bank account for Latin American. How do you get around that unless you go to like a smaller bank?
I got lucky when I came in 3 years ago. It was kind of right before they kind of cracked down. A lot of this is driven by the banking requirements that the IRS is spreading throughout the world now, because the IRS is saying any bank that has an account held by an American with over $10,000 has to report that to the US government. So understandably, all these banks over here hate that. They're saying, wait, we're not in the US and you're telling us we have to report our details to you in the US. And so a lot of banks are just saying it's not worth it. So HSBC here, I mean, they're just cracking down and just saying, nah, it's just too much trouble for us. We're just not interested in that business. So I got in, but HSBC tried to shut my account down about 3 months ago. They just sent me a letter and said, we're closing your account. And I said, and they said, get your money out by February 30th, we're closing your account. And I said, why? And they just said, oh, well, they made this thing about, oh, we need this paperwork from you. I sent in the paperwork. They get back, they say, we didn't receive your paperwork. I'm like, no, I gave you the paperwork. You've got the paperwork. We verified it. And they just wanted to close it. And so I went out on Twitter and I tweeted saying, you know, thanks HSBC for making it hard to run a startup here in Hong Kong. And I got a call from the PR department within an hour, and they fixed everything for me once I made it kind of a public issue. But that's the only way I was able to get help from HSBC, was to embarrass them publicly.